Snow White? Kind of an unusual name, isn't it?
I suppose they do have a point, but what on earth are their names? Are they any less odd?
I'm Sunbeam. Toadstool here.
Fawn is my name.
You can call me Hedgehog.
Robin.
Cricket. My name is Tadpole, and
Apparently not, so maybe they can do me a favor and shut up about it, because if your name's just as odd, you might as well not comment, right? Well, that's somewhat lame attempt at, I guess, douchebag humor. We should move on and discuss the movie itself, right? So, welcome to yet another episode of Bargain Bin Saturdays, and this week I decided to take a look at Snow White by Jetlag Productions. And if you couldn't tell already, this is definitely a cheaply animated film, obviously meant to cash in on the Disney version, since this movie was released within months of the Disney version hitting home video. So this is obviously meant to be a way to trick people into buying a cheap knockoff. Though why people are fooled by these cheap knockoffs is beyond me. I've seen people comment on how they were fooled by the true story of Puss in Boots before, with William Shatner as the voice of Puss in Boots, and they thought it was the Pixar version or whatever. It's just, like, really? Like, the character design is completely different. Not to mention it has William Shatner in it. It's proudly presented on the box itself. Why would you think this is the really cool version you're looking for, not a knockoff? I don't know why people are fooled by these, because Disney usually puts its name on everything, so the fact that they get caught up guard by these cheap knockoffs is always weird to me. I mean, if you like cheap knockoffs, this isn't a bad film to look at, because it's definitely closer to the original source material, but doesn't have as much heart or as entertaining as the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs by Disney by far. The cheap animation definitely can hurt at times, like when the princess tears her outfit, then in the very next scene, it's just perfectly fine, as if the outfit was never torn. Like, her outfits are either magic, or they just couldn't afford to animate her outfit being torn, decided to just forget that they tore it. Makes me wonder why they even bothered with it in the first place, because then I wouldn't have to comment on it and how lazy it was not to follow through with it. If it was never torn, then I wouldn't have any real complaint to have about that sort of thing, because it never would have been brought up. Ugh. Though I also find it strange when people call this mockbuster. Let's make this clear. Disney does not own the rights to Snow White as a story, because Snow White comes from the fairy tale book of a Brothers Grimm, and even they probably didn't originate. They probably just gathered up various versions of the story and put them together into maybe their slightly own version, because there's many different versions of this story, and some of them do differ a bit on the details, quite noticeably. I mean, the only thing I can really say are similar between this version and the Disney version are that the dwarves have names and that they have a song number. Outside of that, this movie tends to stick much closer to the source material, like the evil queen appearing in not one guise, but 3 different guises. First as an old woman selling thread and stuff. The second time as an old man looking for water, and he gives her a poisoned comb. And the third time she appears as a young child offering to sell her apples, and that's when she bites into one and gets poisoned, because only half the apple was poisoned, and the little girl took the clean half, obviously, because she's the evil queen. So she knows which half is safe and which isn't. So yeah, I don't really know if I can agree with this being a mockbuster. A cheap cash-in, definitely. Mockbuster, not so much. Though I suppose I can give the movie some credit for having an arguably darker ending, but not as well executed ending. In the original Disney version, well, I guess you can't even call it original, right? Because it's not the source material for this stuff. In the Disney version, you have this dramatic chase scene where the evil queen eventually falls off a cliff and is then crushed by a rock. In this version, the evil queen is sucked into one of her own mirrors. Well, her magic mirror, obviously. Which punishes her for, well, her greed, I suppose. It definitely is a darker spin on the ending, because let's face it, being trapped within a mirror universe for all eternity would really, really suck. It actually makes me think of Doctor Who, though this obviously came first, but that was my first experience with someone doing that in a narrative. Yeah, darker ending, but it's not executed very well. It's not as dramatic or engaging as the Disney version. So while it's darker, it's not as immersive. But I have to give it credit for at least trying to be darker and more grim, right? Outside of that, I guess there isn't too much to say about this film. I mean, it does have a short runtime of less than an hour, and it does have a few songs, but not too many. It's not really that horrible, I should say. If I didn't say so already, it's just sort of what you expect for a cheap knockoff, really. That's really short, just there. You'll probably forget about it in a week or two and not really think about it too much, after you've seen it for a while. But if you're looking for a cheap cash grab or derivative work of, say, Disney's success, this isn't a bad one to look at. At least it's not painful to sit through, unlike some of the animated films I've watched over the years.
What manner of sorcery is this?
Your jealousy's become a curse. Your luck has gone from bad to worse. You're passing through a magic door where you will behold yourself no more. Your wicked face no more to see. You'll stay here for eternity. So welcome to my special place, and nevermore you'll see your face.